Brandon here from B2R Investing and Financial Talk. I've had several requests for this video. It's how would you underwrite a build to rent project? I'm going to go through all the numbers. It's a little lengthy, longer than normal, but it'd be better to know all the details. And then I'm going to get at the very end, I'm going to give you a cheat code. Once you've had some experience in this, how you can do it very quickly with experience, where I can do it in less than a minute, knowing whether I can buy that land and these numbers work. So stick with me. I hope you enjoy this video. Please like and subscribe, add comments, and I hope you enjoy nailing financial freedom one build at a time. Okay, let's get going. Hopefully you'll enjoy this. I know there's lots of stuff on the whiteboard. I pre-wrote it. I'm left-handed. It makes it easier. But also after I've written it, I'm able to sit and explain it that much better versus focusing on writing it on the board. So the first and foremost is you've got to know the rental market. You need to know those numbers because those numbers are used to underwrite the entire project, what it will cost, and will those numbers work. So, knowing here the market, and I'm going to go through an analysis of a property, and hopefully it'll give you a good general idea and maybe where to go if you're looking at doing this, how you would go about figuring out how to do your build to rent project. But I know the market here, and on a 2-bedroom in this area, they're getting between $1,300 and $1,400. 3 bedrooms are getting between $1,850 and $1,950. What I've found throughout the years, brand new construction that's maybe a year or two, brand new, year or two old, they do get a premium, and typically it's around $50 a month. But in my underwriting of this project, doing the Proforma, I want to be on the safe side, so I'm going to use the lower ranges of the numbers. And the reason on this project, this was a 3-unit triplex townhouse style. I chose the 3-bedroom. What I've found with my 2-bedroom multifamily, I'm having more turnover than my 3 bedrooms. I have quite a few 3-bedroom single-family houses and 3-bedroom, 1 multifamily. And in the 3 years that I've owned all these 3-bedroom properties, I've had 1 single unit out of 7 turn over in the 3 years. So I made the choice to build this 3-bedroom unit, and it's ranging in our area of $1,850 to $1,950 a month in rent. And that's going to be an important number that we're going to need here in a minute. And you'll see as we go about that. So the next thing is finding the area. Maybe you found the land, or found for me it's these infill lots. I've found this lot, I've put it in contract, or maybe I haven't just yet because I want to make sure the numbers work. So here, what I'm looking for, I want to explain it, is the best way I have found, a metric that I use, is looking at what can I get in annualized rents. So I've got to know this number first. And what I'm saying is I want to get as close to 50% of annualized rents on that property, be it a 1-unit property with single family, 50% of those annualized rents up to 75%. Or if it was a lot that I could put multifamily, my budget can go up because I'm getting more annualized rents on a duplex, triplex, fourplex. I'm trying to stay in that 50 to 75% of annualized rents, but you can go up to 100%. It's not the ideal. I'm trying to get as much below that as I can, and my ideal scenario is getting as close to 50% as I can get, and I'm doing that. So those annualized rents, I'm using that as the metric of what I can pay for the lot. The same thing with these lots, you need to know the area where you're building. You need to know the city or county government if there are any impact fees. being for road, for utilities. You must know those fees ahead of time because that sometimes can blow the budget and cause it not to work. The same thing I look for also in the lot is I am preferring to keep it simple and less gotchas and problems. Is I'm looking for lots with all the utilities there. I'm looking for water and sewer, the electric is there, all the things that I need. If it has to have septic, I'm adding more complexity and with a septic system, more cost. So I am preferring to look for infill lots that have all the utilities there, but I'm also looking at the lot preparation. When I'm looking at the lot, I'm looking at the features of the lot that maybe add additional cost. If I've got a lot that is completely level and there's no trees and all we have to do is the pad site preparation, that's saving me a lot of money versus a lot where I have to clear the lot. Maybe there's lots of trees, but what if it also has lots of elevation? Now I have to do additional dirt work and possible retaining walls, which add cost. My ideal scenario is a blank canvas, empty lot with no trees. But I'll tell you, I really love trees, and I'm going to be doing a video on some new builds that I'm doing right now that have trees that we're going to keep. And I'm most excited for that. You'll be able to see this series next summer. We're going to begin clearing the lots and protecting those trees that we're going to keep coming up. So be looking for that this next summer. So I'm looking at all the lot preparation. I'm trying to find predominantly level lots that don't have to have retaining walls because retaining walls add cost. Next, we're going into, now that we thought we found the lot that we think the numbers are going to work, we're going to do a Proforma on the property and do some initial analysis to see, does this have the potential to cash flow and to cash flow well? So I'm looking here and I'm talking about knowing your buy box. So I'm looking at what I'm using. There's two different metrics, two different ways, but what most of the people look at is that cash on cash return on those 1 to 4 families. And I know what an average deal is. You must know this when you're doing your purchases. What is an average deal? What is a good deal? And what is a great deal? And in the cash on cash return in my area, an average deal is around 4 to 5% cash on cash return at typical financing structures. A good deal is between 7 and 9% cash on cash return. That would be a good deal. And a great deal is 10% and above. I only want great deals, but I must know this intimately, and I track the market so that I know what I'm looking at and know to hold it at my purchases accountable to only great deals. So like I said, we go back to the market. We now know the rents, $1,850 to $1,950, but brand new construction tends to get $50 more, so it could potentially be up to $2,000. But what I always do in my underwriting of the project, I want to be extra safe. I want to de-risk it as much as possible or mitigate that risk, so I want to use lower numbers. So on this one, I'm using $1,850. But on this project, as I looked at the dirt, and I'm looking for dirt, one of the things I didn't describe is I'm looking at dirt that's predominantly a square or wide enough rectangle that I can get multiple units, because this was zoned for multifamily. I wanted 5 units on the property, but according to the city's setback requirements on the sides, the front and the back, and the parking requirements, I was only able to get 3 units. But I had just enough space to add storage units on the side on one of the common walls, 10 by 10 storage units, and I added 4 storage units that I estimated with the market I could get $50 a unit for a 10 by 10 storage unit. So I'm going to go low with my rents at $1,850 because I think potential is up to $2,000. That's just going to be gravy. I want to figure rents that are maybe a little low so that if it's better, I've mitigated that risk and it can only go to the upside. So I'm using the $1,850 times 3 units plus the 4 storage units at $200. And by the way, I've done this project. They did rent within 4 months. I had all 4 rented. Monthly rents is $5,750. So what I'm looking to do then is take that and annualize it. But what I need to know is what are my expenses, because now we're getting the gross operating income of $5,750 a month. We're about to figure out the net operating income. Well, the average expenses, not including the mortgage, the national average is around 40%. But in my area, my average for the properties has been 33%. So what I'm doing is I am saving for vacancy, repairs, and maintenance. But I'm starting at a lower number. Typically, the average is 15% for most properties. Because these are brand new, I'm starting at 8%, and every other year I raise it by a percent, because typically you don't have many repairs within the first 7 to 10 years. And just for some anecdotal information, I have 12 units, all brand new in the last 4 years, and in 4 years, total repair expenses has only been $2,200. And that was for some faulty dishwashers that weren't still under warranty and a few other small repairs. So $2,200 on 12 units over 4 years, and that's the only expense. So I've been able to build up quite a bit of reserves in that the SWAN account, that Sleep Well at Night account, that will cover the expenses, and it's continuing to grow. My ultimate goal is to get to at least 4 months of total expenses over and above all expenses, including the mortgage. And I've been able already in 4 years to save up tens of thousands of dollars. So I'm starting out at 8% for my reserves. Taxes are costing me about 16%, right at 16% of total revenue, and insurance is costing 7%. There are no other expenses on this property, so that equals 33%. That's a number we need to use to begin to calculate the net operating income. So there's the monthly, there's our expenses. So let me go over here. So now we're getting the net operating income. We're at, for the 12 months, it's $69,000 minus the 33%. So that's $23,000 for the expenses for the year, equals an NOI of $46,000. We are going to use that number. Now I'm looking at the property, and I'm looking at 2 different ways. I'm looking at sales comps on these triplexes, and I'm looking in MLS, I'm looking at gross rent multipliers of market rent on every property. And as I know the market, I know that they're trading at what's good. If I were to sell it, this is on the sell side, I need to know what the value of the property is. Something that is brand new is trading between 10 and 11 times the gross rent multiplier. But I'm going to be safe, and I'm going to say it's closer to 10.2, which puts that value at around $715,000. And by the way, that was very close. It actually appraised for $720,000. But I said, okay, it's going to be $715,000. What is 75% of the $715,000? And that comes out to $536,000. Now I'm looking at, can I build it for $536,000? Could I build it for that? And then I wouldn't have much money in it other than maybe the closing costs. So I'm looking at this one. The average, is typically in that. What makes that 10 to 11, what makes it a great deal, and I know from the market, if I were to get it at between 8 and 9 times gross rent multiplier, that would be a great deal in today's market. So now we have those numbers. You must get with a builder. What I have is a builder that has a great reputation in the community. I have vetted them. I've talked to people that he has built with before, asked if they were on budget, if his numbers were accurate, and got those testimonials and those reviews, chose him. He is a cost plus model. And what I recommend in every build is you pay the builder once that phase of the build is done. And my builder typically sends me an invoice about every 2 to 3 weeks and details out what his costs were plus his cost plus charge, and I get a very accurate number. So this project was 4,618 square feet. I got the bid and was able to build this for $110 a square foot. Now that does not include the lot. That's just the build costs. And those build costs include, I include in all those costs both the construction loan, the initial closing costs, and the interest carry. How you would want to estimate the interest carry on a construction loan is figuring out for what the dollar amount is of the construction loan, take between 30 and 40% of that number and multiply it times your interest rate. If you're building the whole project in less than a year, it's going to run closer to 30%. If it's running close to a year, I'm figuring almost 40% times the rate. That would be the interest carry. I also, in all my builds, I'm adding 5% as a contingency number. That's what you should do, at least that 5%, to make sure you understand that. After I've built this project, and I've built these plans multiple times over, even with my single family projects, I still leave a contingency number, but it's much smaller now because I've had lots of experience with this builder and I'm building the same floor plan over and over. I've gotten my contingency down to 2% now and typically never use it. But once I have, so I always leave that 2% in. So the lot, I have this lot under contract for $45,000. That represents 65% of the rents. So those are numbers we need. So it's going to cost $110 a square foot. And I want to say, I do not build these cheap. If you've watched some of my videos, you've seen the interior walkthroughs. We're doing tiled backsplash, quartz countertops, shaker cabinets, metal tubs, and tiled tub surrounds with little niches for the shampoo and soap. In the master bedroom, we're doing multiple types of tile and a frameless glass door. We're doing decorative tile even in there. We're doing things nice. I look at all my builds and I do them at the right amount of nice build that doesn't cost any more or very little more, but has a high perceived value. And that's why mine rent, I believe, a little bit quicker. Most of my properties I'm renting within less than 2 weeks and sometimes within just days. But so there we have, now we have our number, 508,000, when the 75% of 715 is 536, so we're good. But I am staying true to what I teach in that I want to be at least at that 70% loan to value. So all my projects, I pay cash for the land. That's what I know up front. That's going to be my money into the deal. That's all I'll need, plus my closing costs. That lands me typically at a 70% loan to value, because all the builds that I've done, I've been able to after construction value has been close to 20%, sometimes 22%. So I have that instant equity. So now let's go down to the project here, to the loan specifics. So we know we can build it at 508. We've got $45,000 in it for the lot. The loan price, and what I'm going to be is conservative. When I was looking at this project, loan prices quoted 6.3%, but I'm going to say during the construction, I'm just going to estimate a little bit higher and make sure it cash flows with an even higher number, because I don't know where that rate will be until after completion. That's when I do the 30-year permanent financing. Typically, my bills take about 9 months, between 7 and 9 months, but I'm going to be extra conservative. So I was conservative on the rents, now I'm conservative on the rate. So I'm using 6 3/4. I'm going to finance just the build portion, which we said is $508, and that's what you've got to know also is your build price, with a builder giving you solid estimate, $508 at 6 3/4, and I only use 30-year fixed rate financing. The payment on that is $3,294 or $39,500 for the year. We're going to need that number. So now we go back to our NOI over here at $46,000. We're adding it over here. That was our NOI after all the regular expenses. Now we're adding in our financing expenses of $39,500 equals cash flow of $6,500. Now let's look at it at $6,500, and this is being ultra conservative both on the rate and the rents. It still cash flows at 10%. That hits what is a great deal in the buy box with cash on cash return. Now, if we were to get market rents of $100 more per unit, that would be an additional $3,600. If we were to get that, this is knowing where market probably will land, and that's still at 6 3/4 interest rate. We're adding another $3,600 to the cash flow. We're now at 15.5% cash on cash return. But we're looking very conservative. We're still in the 10% cash on cash return. So why I do this is I do all this underwriting ahead of time to make sure the numbers work. You want to look for the lots. Ideally, you want to have your builder and you want to have that floor plan already, because those are part of the costs. They're typically called soft costs. Getting a draftsman or an architect to draw you up plans and let your builder get a hard bid on the costs. Now you know that up front too. So what I'm looking at on that 65, I have $45,000 for the lot, and I allocate $20,000 for closing costs because I typically buy down the rate some. So I've got $65,000 in it. I'm trading $65,000 because it's worth $715,000. I'm trading $65,000 for $207,000 in instant equity and a 10% cash on cash return. My loan to value is at that 70%. It hits all my numbers, and then I'm back checking it. Gross rent margin for my cost, I'm at 8.3 times gross rent multiplier based off the rents on this build. And my cash on cash return is going to be between 10 and 15%. And if I get a lower interest rate, it's going to be even better when I know the rates today are at 6.3 and I'm probably going to buy down the rate. Final thing, for those that have stayed on this video, I want to give you a little bit of a cheat code. You must already have some of these numbers because you can use them going forward. Once you know your build cost and you know your lot. I use a metric of $15,000 to $20,000 per unit for my lot purchases, both for single family and for multifamily. I use the 1% rule. It's real simple. If I know the square footage of what I'm building, I have the square foot build cost. If the rents equal 1% of the total build price, I know it cash flows well. Thank you for staying to the end. I hope this helps you get a good, solid look at all these numbers. This is how I underwrite every build to rent project. I hope this helps you. Till next time.